All right, so if you had, for some reason, I don't know why, only been watching the mainstream outlets like CNN and MSNBC throughout Joe Biden's presidency, then you might have been convinced by this point that he is actually the new big, bold, progressive FDR-style president who is pushing Bernie Sanders' radical leftist agenda and actually fighting for the things that the American people want. Obviously, this would be wrong, and I think it's one of the great disservices that we have had throughout the Biden presidency so far is that we are just constantly being gaslit by these networks to believe that he is somebody that he just simply is not. And so I have some good clips here that were put together by our friend Case Study QB, and it's Ari Melber's show on MSNBC, where this is really just a perfect encapsulation of how delusional the mainstream press is and how little they actually get into discussions of actual policy when covering the Joe Biden presidency. So let's just go ahead and watch this, and we'll discuss it as we go.
Is President Biden the new Bernie? He's unveiled a $6 trillion set of budget proposals, lifting the middle class and expanding social safety nets. He also does want to raise funds by hitting corporations and the super wealthy. These sweeping plans would bring spending to basically the highest levels adjusted over the past 50 years. This shows Biden's transformation and how he's governing. Many see here progress and an attempt to consolidate the Democratic Party while on domestic policy going full Bernie, after coming into office with a reputation as more of an incremental moderate.
More cops, more prisons, more physical protection for the people. We have predators on our streets. You must take back the streets.
Congress gives President Bush what he wants in the showdown with Saddam Hussein by a vote of 77 to 23.
We say, yes, Mr. President, you have that power to go to war.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid.
He meant Medicare and Medicaid. He meant Iraq. He meant clean up the streets with that tough and controversial crime bill. Now, that was then, in Joe Biden's long Senate career. And then we know recently that party that he's in seemed to sort of split 2 presidential cycles in a row between the more establishment centrist choice and a progressive one. First, it was Clinton versus Sanders, and then it was Biden versus Sanders. At this time a year ago, Sanders had not yet endorsed Biden, and they'd been engaging in months of respectful but vigorous policy debate.
Joe has voted for terrible trade agreements.
I don't know that there's any trade agreement that the senator would ever think made any sense.
Joe and I have a fundamental disagreement here, in case you haven't noticed. Obviously, the Paris Accord is useful, but it doesn't go anywhere. If you laugh at Joe, then you're missing the point. This is an existential crisis.
About a year later, Biden's governing from the core and base of the Democratic Party, the progressive base, pushing the liberal plans I just mentioned, spending that outstrips anything from the early days of the Obama-Biden administration, pushing higher taxes on the wealthy and on corporations.
So continuing on here, it's split up into 2 clips, but we'll just finish it off here.
To labor more than he did in past decades, and Joe Biden taking sides with labor more than he did in past decades or than past Democratic presidents. He's pushing the new multi-trillion-dollar plan with major planks for jobs, racial justice, and addressing climate change. Now, whether it's correlation or causation, Biden at times can sound a bit like the new Bernie.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there because, listen, the only thing that he said in that entire string that he was just putting together there that was actually true is, well, actually 2 things. One is that, yes, Joe Biden was governing as a Republican throughout his entire history in the Senate. He pushed for the worst conservative policies in basically modern history. He pushed for the Patriot Act. He pushed for the Iraq War. He pushed for NAFTA. He pushed for the crime bill. He was like maybe the most destructive politician, arguably, throughout his Senate career in modern American history and pushing the worst pieces of conservative legislation that we have seen. And that was the one thing that he said that was true. The other thing that I think he said was true was right there at the end, where he was basically saying that Biden sounds like Bernie sometimes. Yes, sometimes he sounds like them, but that's just because he's virtue signaling. That's because he's not actually backing it up on the policy. He goes out and he says, oh, I'd support the $15 minimum wage. And then what did we see when it came to crunch time when he actually had to fight for the $15 minimum wage? Well, he capitulated to a fucking Senate parliamentarian who has absolutely no power in actually preventing him from getting the $15 minimum wage. He didn't want to take on the fight with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. So he rolls over. He advocates for these things generally in the right direction, generally as Bernie would do. And then he doesn't actually fight for it or follow up on it in any way. So the person that they were just depicting Joe Biden as throughout his Senate career, you know, the militaristic one, the austerity-minded Joe Biden, that is the exact same Joe Biden that we are dealing with right now. It's just that he's made slight adjustments to his rhetoric. What has he done throughout his presidency so far that would justify comparing him to Bernie? Not only does he not support the policies that Bernie does, like Medicare for all, but he's not even doing the half-assed compromises that he ran on. He's not even doing the public option, like we just talked about in a video the other day. The public option was not even included in his budget proposal. That was the supposed realistic moderate compromise between that and Medicare for all, and he's not even talking about that anymore, let alone going out and actually fighting to push it. So everything that Ari Milber was just talking about in that clip, whether it's advocating for union rights, whether it's because we have legislation that's on the table like the PRO Act, is Joe Biden going out and doing anything to get the PRO Act actually passed? Is he pressuring the members of his own Congress that are standing in the way of getting something like the PRO Act, the Protect the Right to Organize Act, actually passed? Is he doing anything to actually accomplish that? No, he's not. So the Joe Biden presidency cannot be characterized as even remotely close to what a Bernie Sanders presidency would have looked like, because he's not only is he not fighting for the things that he is gesturing towards that were part of Bernie Sanders' agenda, but everything that he has been pushing for is in and of itself not even close to Bernie Sanders' agenda, right? So when we talk about the militarism overseas, he's still pushing for an increase to the military budget. Bernie Sanders wanted to cut the military budget, okay? He's not taking on the big pharmaceutical companies. Bernie Sanders wanted to rein in big pharmaceutical companies and actually have, for example, Medicare negotiate drug prices. Biden doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to lower the Medicare age. He's not fighting for the public option. He didn't fight for the $15 minimum wage. He's not fighting for the PRO Act. What is he actually fighting for? He's not fighting for anything. Biden's presidency can be accurately characterized as putting forward half-assed, already compromised and watered down plans, then letting Republicans go and water them down more with pointless bipartisan conversations that the Republican Party are never going to actually vote for, and then taking that watered down on top of watered down legislation and then not even fighting for that, and not even actually pushing to get that passed. So that's what Joe Biden's presidency has actually been so far. But we still have a media, we still have MSNBC and these anchors going out there and pretending as if he's dramatically changed the scope of the United States economic system like FDR did. He's not even doing remotely close to that. He's not advocating for that, and he's not even coming close to fighting for that. So I think it's just ridiculous. It's comically hilarious how either detached from reality these commentators are, or that they're just gullible idiots who believe the head fakes that Joe Biden does, where he gestures towards supporting a policy that he actually has no intention whatsoever of passing. So this is where we are right now with the Joe Biden presidency and where we're at right now with our media, completely failing to accurately inform the American people of what Joe Biden's presidency actually is, and that can be more accurately than comparing to Bernie Sanders, classified as a moderate Republican presidency.